Well, good morning. If this is your first time here, my name is Philip. I'm the pastor here at GCC. We're really, really glad you're here, and you get extra credit points in heaven because you came at 9:30 in a flood. So thank you guys for being here so that I can sleep tonight and not feel like I'm a complete failure. It's really appreciative. But we are really glad you're here. If this is your first time here or maybe your first time back in a while, you're catching us at the end of the movie. This is the end of our series called Faith. We've been studying the life of Joseph in the Old Testament. I realize I need to clarify that because some people hear Joseph and they automatically go to Jesus' earthly father. But we are looking at Joseph from the Old Testament. That's Joseph in the coat of many colors. That's Joseph in Egypt. That's the whole deal. As a matter of fact, it took you, like it did me, a long time to put this together, but that's how the Hebrew people got to Egypt for the whole Moses thing. And so this is how they got there. This is the story of Joseph. He had older brothers. And really quickly, to kind of recap where we've been, we looked at the life of this 17-year-old kid whose brothers were jealous of him, were so jealous they decided to get rid of him. They ended up selling him into slavery, and he ends up in Egypt in the house of this guy named Potiphar. And Potiphar's wife liked him, kind of came on to him. He said no. Then she lied about him. He ends up in prison. He is there with a couple of guys who used to work for Pharaoh. They have some dreams. He interprets the dreams. It comes true. He asks them to remember him when they go back to work. And one of them goes back to work. They forget about him for a couple of years. And all of a sudden, as we looked last week, Pharaoh has a couple of dreams that he can't figure out. Nobody else can figure it out. And then finally, the cupbearer who is in prison with Joseph remembers there was this guy who interpreted dreams and they came true. Maybe we should bring him in. And they do. And they bring Joseph in. Pharaoh tells him his dreams. And they can prepare for what is to be 7 years of plenty, 7 years of just incredible harvest and growth and wealth in the country, and then 7 years of famine where nothing's going to be able to be planted and harvested at all. And Joseph is put in charge. This Hebrew slave, this teenage Hebrew slave, eventually becomes the second in command of the largest, you could argue, the most powerful force in the entire world at the time, the Egyptian nation. And so we jump into the story, and if you have a Bible and you want to follow along today, we're going to be in chapter 42 of Genesis. Genesis is the very first book of the Bible. If you're new to the Bible or you're back to the Bible, there's several different books and letters. It's not really one book, the Bible. It's a collection of letters and books and writings and poems and history books. And we're going to be in Genesis, the very first one, chapter 42. And we're going to cover a few chapters today. We're going to look specifically at two specific sections of Scripture. But as we come on the story, Joseph's in charge, and the 7 years of plenty have been just that. Plenty and just crazy amounts of harvest, just prosperity across the land. And Joseph is behind the scenes preparing for year 8. 7 years of plenty, and then year 8 hits, and he is ready. As a matter of fact, he was so good at his job, and he was so powerful that Pharaoh gave him a nickname. And the nickname, I'm not going to tell you the nickname because honestly I don't know how to pronounce it because there's too many consonants together. But the nickname means revealer of secrets. That's how the esteem Pharaoh had for Joseph. He thought of him as somebody who is on a whole different level than the rest of us. So he's 30 years old now, and he's the revealer of secrets. He's Pharaoh's best buddy. And famine hits, and one of the neat little things that I discovered, that I read and did a little bit more research on this is during this time, before the famine hits, Joseph has 2 sons. And you may have heard of these sons before. There's Manasseh and Ephraim. And here's what's really neat about what he does. He names his sons these names. Manasseh means forgetful, which is a really terrible name to name your child, unless you're Joseph. Because what Joseph meant by that was he is forgetting the difficult times that he had faced before. And so that son was kind of a representation that I'm going to put the stuff that got me here in the past, I'm going to be forgetful of it because God has now blessed me. He's got me in a place of prosperity and joy, and I don't have to live in that stuff anymore. And for me, as Ward shared, we went to the Orange Conference. I kind of had one of those moments this week. It was 8 years ago that I had recently been dismissed from a church staff because it wasn't a culture fit. I worked there for 4 months and 4 days, and we all recognized I do not fit in this culture. I was very family ministry, small groups driven, and that church at the time was not, and it just was, we were just clanging heads, and so we went our separate ways. But I remember being at the Orange Conference, unemployed, not a clue what was going to happen with my life, standing there worshiping and just praying and asking God to do something. And over the next 7 or 8 years, actually it was about 7 years, we faced a lot of difficulty, a lot of transition, a lot of doubt, a lot of pain, a lot of betrayal. For us, it felt like betrayal. And I was sitting there at Orange Conference this week with my friends Ward and Jay, with a church back home that was praying for us. And I was now a pastor in that room, which felt really weird. And the Holy Spirit just kind of said, that season's done. That season is done. Those 7 years of pain and questioning, those 7 years of seeking and not understanding, you're finished. And I'm doing something new with you. And so thank you for being a church that can just give your pastor a lot of love and your staff a lot of love, and being a place that I loved being there. I saw a lot of old friends, but I could not wait to get back with you guys. And I know that sounds like preacher talk, and I love your brother, but it's honestly how I feel. But so he named his first son, all that to say, he named his first son Forgetful. His second son, Ephraim, he named him that because that means restored. And so the idea was that one son represented the end of a season, that he's going to forget about that pain. The next son kind of represented, I'm restored. I have a new life. God has brought me to prominence. He's brought me to a place of restoration. And so I love that view, because if anybody had reason to be bitter, if anybody had reason to stand in a field and cuss at God, it was this guy. Because he constantly chose God and constantly chose God. And it seemed like for years on end, nothing but pain and betrayal and difficulty found him. And so he's in this place, he's in power, he's saying, God has pushed that stuff behind me and he's restored me to a place where I can move forward with my life. My sons are going to represent that. And then, bam, year 8 hits in Egypt, and the famine is worse than anyone could have possibly believed, except for Joseph, because he was prepared. And so the famine spreads out, and everybody hears Egypt has food. Egypt has grain storehouses like crazy, and they're selling it not just to Egyptians, they're making it available to foreign people as well. So Jacob, back in the land of Canaan, hears about it and sends his sons down to Egypt because he hears that they're selling it to foreigners. He sends all of his sons except for one named Benjamin. And here's why Benjamin is important. If you're not familiar with this story, just remember, Joseph was the favored son of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel. Rachel only had one other son, and his name was, you can guess it, Benjamin. Okay? So Jacob does not send Benjamin because he's terrified that the only son he has left, because Jacob thinks Joseph's dead. Remember that his brothers sold him, then took his coat back, covered it in blood, and tore it up, said, Dad, your son's dead. Some animal got him. And so he thinks his son's dead, but he's got this one son by his favorite wife, and he's not sending him anywhere. So he sends his other sons down there. And here's where the story takes a bit of a weird turn. Because when I'm reading this and I'm preparing for this, I'm reminded of, I don't identify with Joseph. I identify with the pain sometimes, but I don't identify with Joseph because I'm just too petty. Like, I'm a jerk. Do you know this? Okay, if you know me well, you know I'm a jerk. We sat up in the in the hotel room the other night, Jay, Ward, and I, and they didn't have. I don't have cable at home, so for Comedy Channel, I watch SBN. Are you familiar with SBN? The Swaggart Broadcasting Network, whatever, Sun Life Broadcasting Network. Jimmy Swaggart's channel. If you remember, he was a very, very popular evangelist in the '80s, and he cried a lot and that kind of thing. And so now he has this church and this huge network that they have to raise like $7 billion every month. And so they're always asking for money. I watch that for my Comedy Channel because it's hilarious. Some of the things they say are like, oh, we're going to preach today, but we're just going to throw this away. So we sat up in the hotel the other night, and we were just, we need to repent for this. I do anyway. We just made fun of preachers that we found on the internet. That's what we did for actually a couple of hours, and we had to skip part of the next session because we stayed up too late, making fun of people. And actually, not only that, we were in the auditorium, in the arena, and Ward and I for a while. Jay, I think, felt convicted, so he just took himself out of the conversation. We were looking around at all of these people, and there's a lot of children's pastors, a lot of youth guys, and a lot of other people, and we were like, okay, well, we're not cool enough to be in that church. Nope, we're not cool enough to be on that staff. And then this one guy walks by in an oversized t-shirt and a really, really kind of nasty ponytail, and like, he's not cool enough to be on our staff. So I'm a jerk. All that to say, I'm a jerk. So I don't identify with Joseph because I'm just too mean, and I'm petty, and I let stuff bother me for way too long. If you cut me off in traffic, I'm going to remember that. As a matter of fact, one time we were driving to Georgia, and this idiot who had Beanie Babies covering the entire back window of their car not only cut us off, but nearly hit us. So what does a normal, rational pastor do? He hits his windshield and shatters it while on the interstate. Yeah, that was a fun call. I'm saying that out loud because this is part of my therapy. So I had to call our insurance person and say, hey, we have a cracked windshield. Luckily, they didn't ask how did it crack because I didn't want to tell that story. But when I look at this story and I look at this scenario, Joseph is now in power. His brothers, who have no idea where he is at this point or if he's alive, are coming to see him. And they get in there, and Joseph recognizes them immediately. They come up asking for food, and he looks at him, and he's like, oh yeah, here we go, right? But here's where I would be. And this is what it reminds me of. You remember the movie Pretty Woman? 1990? Julia Roberts and Richard Gere? I know this is a hard left turn for you, but you're going to understand. There's this, if you're not familiar with this movie, and you probably shouldn't be because it's about a prostitute. Anyway, if you don't know what a prostitute is, don't ask me, ask your parent. This movie, there's this scene where Richard Gere gives Julia Roberts all this money and says, go shopping, go get clothes so you won't look like a prostitute, and get nice clothes and just go crazy. So she goes into the store, right? And she walks in, and she's in these boots up to here and very little, not much else. And she walks in there and she's looking at clothes, and the lady's like, can I help you? And she's like, I'm just looking for something conservative. She said, how much is this? And the lady's like, we don't have that in your size. And she's like, I didn't ask what size it is. How much is it? She's like, it's very expensive. And they essentially kick her out of the store. Well, fast forward later on, she goes back to the hotel, and the concierge there is very compassionate and calls up somebody, and they get her, and she goes out and spends just bukus of dollars. And she's walking down Rodeo Drive in this really, really, swank-looking conservative outfit, and she's got bags and bags and bags, and she walks back into the store. And she just goes, she walks in, and the lady's like, can I help you? She's like, nope, just bypasses this one person. Goes up to the lady she saw before. She goes, hi, you remember me? You work on commission, right? She's like, yeah. She goes, big mistake. Huge. That's me. Like, that's how I would be with my brothers who sold me into slavery, came to buy stuff from me. I'm like, nope, we're out, suckers. Get to stepping, right? That's how I would be. Joseph doesn't, and he has a way of working out his bitterness with them, but not being the big jerk that I am. He comes to them, and he's like, y'all want to buy food? I don't believe you. I think you're spies. You're spies here to see the nakedness of the land. You're going to try and take advantage of us. You're spies. And he goes through this whole thing. He tells them what they need to do to prove to him that they're not spies. And then there's this verse, there's this section that I love, because you know this. You have people in your life like the brothers. In chapter 42, verse 21, this is what the brothers say. Then they said to one another, this is the brothers talking. Then they said to one another, in truth, we are guilty concerning our brother. That's Joseph. They're remembering. Like, you know when you get called into your boss's office, or maybe remember back when you were in school and you got called into your teacher's, like a special meeting or the principal's office, and you automatically try to think of everything you've ever done wrong or you might have said, and now we have the internet, and so we're looking back through our timeline to see what we posted and maybe who's going to be offended. Okay, that's where the brothers are at right now. They're like, oh, this guy knows. How does he know? He knows. We're guilty concerning our brother. In that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. God is now punishing us for what we did almost 15 years ago. Verse 22, and Reuben answered them, and I love this, in pure big brother fashion. Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you didn't listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. Remember, Reuben, all this time, thinks Joseph is dead. It wasn't just Jacob that they told he died, because when they threw Joseph into the pit, Reuben went somewhere, and while he was gone, the other brothers sold Joseph into slavery. So when he came back and he's not in the pit, and the brothers say he was killed by a wild animal, Reuben has been carrying that burden for years. Reuben thinks it's his fault that this kid is dead because it was his idea to put him in the pit that got him killed by the wild animal. And you think, like, over time the brothers would have let Reuben in, but you don't do that. Like, you wouldn't do that with your older brother. If he's like crying one night, like imagine the brothers are back in their house and they hear Reuben like Joseph, doing the ugly cry in bed. The brothers aren't going to go up like, hey Reuben, dude, it's cool. He's not dead. We just sold him into slavery. Like that doesn't go well either. Like Reuben wouldn't be like, oh, thank God he's in slavery. Oh, I'm going to go to sleep now, guys. You need something? We're good. But he's been carrying this around. And so once again, I imagine this scenario where Reuben says to his brothers, I told y'all not to kill him. Didn't I tell y'all? And they're all just kind of looking at each other and looking down like, yeah, you told us, Reuben. You told us not to kill him. Too bad we totally did. He's dead, right? So Reuben's been carrying this thing around. And what we have to understand about this is that Joseph is human. He's not Jesus. He's like you and I. When I read the Bible, I have this tendency of putting all of these characters into this like superhero category, that they didn't have real emotions, that they didn't have hair on their arms, that they didn't think the way we think and feel the emotions that we felt. But Joseph did. And when he sees his brothers, something creeps up in him that he just wants to mess with them a little bit. But he wants to take care of them too, because he's a man of character. He's a man of compassion. So he gets this whole thing. He says, okay, to prove that you're not spies, I want you to go back and bring your youngest brother, because he asked them these questions. They told him they have another brother back home. He says, bring your youngest brother here to prove to me that you are brothers, that there is another brother, and then come back and I'll sell more grain to you. So they buy grain, they pack them up, and they put them on their way to go home. And what Joseph does then is he puts the money that they gave him back into their packs. And so somewhere along the line, on the way home, they stop for a break, and one of the brothers opens up his pack and notices the money's there. And then, like, their heart really sinks. Like, they got to change their tunic at that point, because they think that not only does this guy think we're spies, and he's very powerful, but now he's going to think that we stole from him because we've all got our money and the grain. There's no chance we can ever go back. But they've got a brother that's back there. Part of the deal was that Joseph kept one of the brothers in custody, so when they came back, he would give him back. So they have to go back at some point, or they just give up on another brother. Not the first time. I guess it kind of gets easier over time, right? It's like the first time you get, well, anyway, you understand. So they go back, they tell their father Jacob, like, here's the deal. We met this guy and he asked us all these questions. He wants us to bring Benjamin back. And Jacob's like, you morons. Why do you hate me? Why did you say you have another brother? Do you want to bereave me even more? If you took him, I'm not going to let you take him. If you took the only son I have left by Rachel, then I can't do it. I can't handle it. So they take the grain, they stay there as long as they can afford to, as long as they have food, and then the food runs out, and one of the brothers comes up like, hey, Dad, so we're out of food. There's only one place that's got it. We got to go back, and we got to take Benjamin. And Jacob kind of freaks out again. He's like, fine, take your son. But if anything happens to him, I'm dead. I'm going to die of heartbreak. And so they do. They take Benjamin. They take both the money that they bought the grain the first time and another amount of money to buy more grain. They go back to Egypt. They bring Benjamin in. And this whole scene unfolds before him, where Joseph sees Benjamin. And he just is overcome with emotion. And they bring them into a feast. They set him up, and he's feeding them. And then all these things happen. In the end, Joseph is overcome with so much emotion that he sends everyone out except for his brothers. And his brothers are like, oh, here it is. We're dead. We're done. And he reveals himself to them. He says, I'm your brother Joseph that you thought was dead. And for me, when I read this, I think of Reuben. I think of Reuben, who thinks his brother Joseph is dead, and all the other brothers know that he's been sold into slavery. And I think Reuben kind of chuckles at the table. Yeah, you're our brother. You hear this guy? And why are you crying? What's your deal? What do you mean? You're serious? You're serious? You're Joseph? He Joseph? What? That's just the way I view it. If I made a movie, this is how it would go down. They'd be all a little bit more ghetto. I don't know why, but they would. He reveals himself to him, and he says, I want you to go get Dad. I want you to bring him here. I'm going to set you up. And the thing that I see from this is that Joseph is unwilling to live in the past. He's unwilling to hold on to that grudge. He's unwilling to hold on to that pain. He's unwilling to hold on to the unknown in his life. Why did all that stuff happen? Why have I been here? Then a few years go by, and Jacob dies. And the brothers freak out again. Like, now that Dad's dead, Joseph's going to kill us all. And they start freaking out. And they go to him and they say, hey, before Dad died, Joseph, you should know this, that he made a request that you should promise not to kill us. That's what Dad said. That's what he told me. And he said, we'll be your servants. Just don't kill us. In chapter 50 of Genesis, one of the most beautiful pictures of forgiveness, Joseph looks at his brothers and says this in verse 20. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Listen. I don't think I've ever experienced like pure evil and betrayal from a really malice point of view in my life, but I've had people hurt me. I've had friends give up on me, and you have too. You've had bosses not stick up for you. You've had parents walk out of your life. You've had kids walk out of your life. You've had friends walk out of your life. You've lost loved ones. You've lost jobs. Romantic relationships have gone south. Maybe you've lost a child. Or maybe that future that you hoped has not come. And that stuff doesn't go away easy. Over time, that stuff just kind of like sludge, just kind of settles in our heart. Kind of coats things, and we start to filter everything in our life through that hurt and that pain. That's not the life God intended for us. I was sitting in those seats this week, and I'm not up here today like you should be like me. I'm in process just like you. I got a lot of bitterness and hurt I'm working through. I'm sitting there in those seats, and a guy that has the job that I was hired for was speaking on the main stage. As a matter of fact, he has the job, and he's speaking on that stage because I brought that conference to that church. There's plenty of opportunity for me to sit there and like, you know what? You wouldn't be getting your paycheck if it wasn't for me. You and your skinny jeans and your blazer. I'm just jealous that I could never wear skinny jeans. My calves are too big. We all have those people in our lives that when we see them, maybe passing even on the road, you're like, something rises up in you and you just breathe. You wish you could just post, you could subtweet them or post something on their Facebook to let them know that you haven't forgot what they did to you. That's not the life God designed for us. See, whatever you've walked through over the last few years, whether it was hurt or betrayal or failure or loss or death, like Joseph, we have to decide that we're not going to live in past hurt. Decide that you're not going to live in that past hurt. And it's not easy. Like I said, I'm in process with you. There's people that I'll check their Twitter. I don't follow them, but I check it because I want to know what's going on. There's people I'll go around and have a conversation like, so how's so-and-so? I don't really want to know that they're doing well. I want to know that they're not doing well. I want the details, the ugly details. I want their grass not to be able to grow in their front yard. That's how petty I am. But we have to decide that despite that hurt, loss, and that pain, that we're not going to live back there. And when we decide to be forgetful of our past and live in the new day, in the restored day that God has given us, there's a human instinct that says that's not right. Andy Stanley put it this way: in the shadow of my hurt, forgiveness feels like a decision to reward my enemy. Isn't that true? In the shadow of my hurt, forgiveness feels like a decision to reward my enemy. But in the shadow of the cross, forgiveness is merely a gift from one undeserving soul to another. You see, the only reason that we have faith today, the only opportunity we've been given to trust in God is because He has forgiven us. That He has decided to be forgetful of our past and to restore us for His future. You can look at it this way: forgiveness leads to faith. We like to sing songs like that, right? We like to sing about God's forgiveness of our lives. We like to raise our hands. We like to sing songs like "Give Me Faith," to trust what you say. You've forgiven me, God. Thank you for not letting my past affect my future. Thank you for not letting the things I've said about you and done toward you affect our relationship. Thank you, God, for your forgiveness. Give me that faith. But we don't like to live on the other side of this statement, which is this: that faith leads to forgiveness. If forgiveness leads to our faith, then our faith now has to lead to the forgiveness of the people in our lives. It's the only way we can live out the life God designed us for. That's the best way for our God to receive the glory He's due. Yes, forgiveness has led to my faith, but now my faith has to translate, has to lead to forgiveness in the lives of people around me. Once again, I will tell you, I'm in process. There are people in my life that I have not fully forgiven, and I'm not at a place where I'm ready to forgive them. But I'm trying. So, to finish our time together this morning, we're going to do two things. The band's going to come on up, and they're going to sing a song over us. Okay? You guys can come on up and get in place. They're going to sing a song over us, a song that Brogan showed me, and I thought, this is beautiful. As we look at the life of Joseph and the story of Joseph, someone who has been betrayed and hurt and lost so much, and was able to forgive his brothers, restore them to a place of love and family, to move forward, to preserve their life. That many of us today need an opportunity, maybe not to get fully to forgiveness, but to simply to say, God, I understand what's required of me, and I'm putting myself in your hands. It may take a while, but I'm going to put it there for you. So as they sing the song, the one thing is, if you've got hurt or pain or loss or betrayal or whatever it is, that sludge that's in your life that's filtering everything else you see, then I want you to have some time to pray and ask God to help clear that out. Ask God to help you see those people in a new light, not as the people that have hurt you and betrayed you, to not live in that loss of a loved one, but to be restored for your future. And the other thing we want to do today is we've got some college students home, and we got some college students who are going to be leaving. I want us to pray for them. So during this song, if you need to, you can even come down here and pray. You can get down here on your knees on this very uncomfortable floor and feel like you're even more holy because it hurts. You can do that. If you have a college student friend that's here and you want to pray over them and just pray for them, this is a time to do that. You can even get up and move. You can make everybody uncomfortable because you're moving, actually putting your hands on them and stuff. It's really weird. We want to pray for you college students because we love you. A couple of them are home from school. We've got a couple that are going to be leaving and going on mission, and we got some in the next service who've been here from Winthrop, and they're going to be going home. Um, we want to pray for them because they have been an incredible part of what God's been doing in the last few months in our church. But forgiveness has led to our faith. It's time that we let our faith lead to forgiveness. Let's pray together. Jesus, thank you so much. Thank you for letting us see beyond ourselves. Thank you for renewing hope in our hearts. And Lord, as we search our hearts and as we open the door that you might clean out our hearts, give us the courage, give us the humility that we need to forgive people in our lives. Give us the strength we need to move forward from a difficult circumstance. Help us to forgive ourselves, things that we've done that have led to our own pain and hurt. Jesus, I ask that you would take the next few minutes as the band sings, that you would reveal areas of our heart that maybe we don't even know are still covered in sludge. You'd help each and every one of us live out your life in ours, forgetting what is behind, straining toward what is ahead, letting go of hurt, and choosing to love if only for the reason that you love them. I thank you for this today, Jesus. We pray this in your name.